Okay, welcome to part 11 where I modify my frame to fit the BBCR Engineering bobber kit. I'm starting by marking the seat support bracket that's welded to the rear of the frame. This is the part that I'm going to remove that's going to be replaced by the BBCR bracket. So what I'm doing here is cutting the steel tubing for the rear seat brackets in 4 locations, and then I'm going to go back along the top of the frame and remove the area that's welded, and the welded part is what is used to hold the tank in the original design. So here I'm taking exceptional care to grind away the welds to remove this tank bracket component without welding into the frame. What I don't want to do is end up cutting into the frame and creating additional work when I prepare the frame for body work and for painting. So fitting the BBCR Engineering bracket is pretty straightforward. It's a really tight fit, but I can see why that would be beneficial when you've got one bracket doing the job of holding the seat in the rear suspension. It fits straight down over top of the frame, and you've got to really be careful of alignment. So I spend a couple cycles aligning the spring with the bracket to make sure that everything lines up properly. According to BBCR Engineering, the bracket should be roughly 7 inches from the bottom member of the frame, which is what you'll see me measuring a few times. So when I drilled my holes, I started with drilling the bottom hole with just a very small 1/8 inch drill bit as an alignment point, and then worked my way up to a larger bit. I started with the bottom bolt first, and then tested my alignment again to make sure everything was square, and finally added in the second bolt at the top. Honestly, installation is pretty straightforward and there's a little bit of room for error. The 2 things I would be careful of is making sure that the bracket is located at the right height and that the spring clears the back of the frame. You can see it's very close there, but most importantly that the seat bracket is aligned straight with the frame itself. I noticed that it moved around a little bit to left and right, which would mean that the seat would be at a goofy angle and not lined up straight with the tank, and it also would not be aligned straight with the spring. So that's a little bit of extra care that you want to take when installing this bracket. But overall, as you can see here, it looks pretty good, and this installation took me a better part of 2 hours to do. So now what I'm doing is creating covers for the 2 tube ends that I cut off from the seat bracket. So I've got some steel plate that I had available, and what I'm doing here is creating 2 squares that my intentions are to weld to the top of the tubes and then grind them down to the shape of the tube. Ultimately, the plan is that they should be seamless and look like they're just factory the way that they're installed. I'm just going to start by tacking them on to make sure that they're square and that alignment's good, and that'll allow me to just grind down the plates in order to get a good match with the size and the shape of the tubes. Now this didn't quite go as expected because the plates welded onto the tubes in this fashion made it very difficult to grind them down to shape, and they ended up like mushrooming over top of the frame members, which was not ideal for a final look. So what I ended up doing was taking them back off and grinding them down independently from the frame with the grinder. What that enabled me to do was then weld them perfectly to the top of the frame, which made that seamless finish that I was looking for to begin with. So the end result are two perfectly fit welded on caps at the end of these tubes, and although it's not very well pictured here, they are even and square, and in my opinion, once they're painted, they'll look factory. The next step here is to grind off all the remaining welding from the upper part of the bracket. Pretty quick process, although again, I'd take some care in not grinding through the tube, the main frame tube, and just making sure to remove only the weld. The next step here is to break down the remaining parts of the bike. The plan is to just paint the frame by itself. So to give my painter a little less trouble, I'm breaking down the bike so he can just focus on making that frame as good as possible and not wasting a lot of time on removing parts that I should remove for him. Always remember when you're removing the triple tree to check for bearings. I forgot about all the bearings. They are free spinning bearings, so when you remove that triple tree, note that they're going to fly out everywhere, so keep track of them. So I'm going to keep the frame painted black. I'm going to go with a single stage frame urethane coating, which is pretty durable, goes on easy, will cover up a lot of the aging and blemishes in the frame. And right here what I'm doing is just doing some quick degreasing to again, give my painter a little bit of a head start. And then I'm also going to do a little sanding with Scotch-Brite just to break down all the surfaces and to help make this as easy as possible for him. One bonus I forgot to mention is now that I'm going with this single strut rear suspension, I can remove that small spring mount on the far side of the swing arm. So just a quick zap from the grinder and that piece is off. I think having that bracket removed, since it's not used at all, is going to give the bike a nice clean look at the rear end. Alright, so the frame and tank are ready for paint. I'm expecting the frame back next week and then the tank back probably a week after that. Oh, and last but not least, I've finally picked out a paint color for the tank, which will be the main color for the bike, and that is, this time I'm going with red. And not just any red, that's Ferrari red. Rosso Corsa. Alright, that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.